Welcome to the What If Universal channel, where we explore the craziest what-if scenarios based on real science to stimulate imagination and bring useful knowledge. Today, we're diving into a dramatic hypothesis. What if 10 quadrillion liters of water crashed into the Sahara? Meaning, what if 10 quadrillion liters of water suddenly crashed into the Sahara Desert? Before diving deep into the story, let me hook you with 5 fascinating scientific facts about the Sahara and water, drawn from reputable studies, so you see that this idea isn't just imagination, but has a real basis. These facts will make your jaw drop and keep you glued to the screen. The Sahara was once a lush paradise garden, not the arid desert it is today. About 6,000 years ago, the Sahara wasn't a deadly land of vast golden sand, but a fertile area full of rivers, lakes, forests, and wildlife. According to geological studies from NASA and ancient sediment analysis, natural climate change turned it into the world's largest hot desert, spanning over 9.2 million kilometers, equivalent to the area of the United States, about 9.8 million kilometers. Imagine if water returned, the Sahara could revive like in ancient times, turning the desert into a giant oasis. This is based on data from climate models, showing that the Sahara once received abundant rainfall from the Atlantic Ocean. The amount of 10 quadrillion liters of water sounds enormous, but it's only a small fraction compared to America's water sources. 10 quadrillion liters of water, that is 10,000 km², is enough to create an average water layer about 1.09 meters deep across the entire Sahara. To make it easy to visualize with an American context, this amount of water is only about 0.44 times the total volume of the Great Lakes, America's largest freshwater source, with about 2,200 kilometers of water. The Great Lakes provide water for over 30 million Americans in states like Michigan and New York, supporting agriculture and industry. If we borrowed a portion of water from the Great Lakes to pour into the Sahara, it would create a new inland sea, but it's still just a drop in the ocean of Earth, only accounting for 0.0072% of the planet's total water, about 1.3086 billion km. The Sahara is crying with recent unusual floods, a sign of climate change. In 2024, the Sahara experienced rare heavy rains after 50 years of drought, creating green water lakes amid the golden sand in the northern region. According to NASA satellite data, this rainfall came from Atlantic storms, causing floods and even making plants bloom. This isn't just a strange phenomenon, but also a warning that climate change is increasing flood frequency in the driest desert on Earth, where some areas rain less than once a year. CNN.com. In America, this is like the Mojave Desert in California, suddenly getting flash floods, affecting ecosystems and water sources. Flooding the Sahara could change global climate, according to scientific models. Studies from the American Meteorological Society show that if the Sahara flooded, the enormous evaporation would create thick clouds, increasing rain in Europe and Asia. But it could also expand the desert northward, affecting agriculture in neighboring countries. A what-if model from scientists suggests that adding water could green the Sahara, reducing climate change by absorbing CO2 through new plants, but it also risks causing extreme floods. Journals, Ametsoc.org. Compared to America, this is like flooding in the Midwest, where weather changes affect corn and soybean crops. The weight of the water could shake the earth, like earthquakes in America. With billions of tons in weight, the sudden water pour would compress the Sahara soil, causing subsidence and small earthquakes, similar to studies on the Hoover Dam in America, where high water levels create geological pressure. But twist, this pressure could slightly shift the Earth's rotation axis, making days a few milliseconds longer, a phenomenon observed in major earthquakes like those in California. These facts aren't just based on science, but also evoke a future full of surprises. Could humans heal the Sahara with water, or would it lead to disaster? If you find this story appealing, please like, share, and especially subscribe to the What If Universal channel today. We bring you weekly educational entertainment videos on what-if scenarios based on science, from the universe to the environment. Subscribe so you don't miss out, and turn on notifications for the latest videos. Join us in exploring the what-if world and learning every day. Now, let's dive deep into the main content: scientific and geological impact. When 10 quadrillion liters of water, 10,000 TS flood the Sahara, the geological impact will be immediate and intense, much like the construction of the Hoover Dam in the US during the 1930s. The water level in Lake Mead caused a series of local tremors due to the immense pressure. Imagine this: the Sahara, with its loose sand layers hundreds of meters thick, suddenly bearing the weight of billions of tons of water. Scientifically calculated, an average depth of about 1.09 meters over an area of 9.2 million km, equivalent to flooding the entire US from coast to coast. First, the Sahara's terrain isn't as flat as many think. It has deep depressions like the Qattara Depression, 133 meters below sea level, and the vast Tenere Basin. Water would quickly flow into these areas, forming inland lakes tens or even hundreds of meters deep in the lowest points. This is similar to flooding in Death Valley, California, the lowest point in the US, at 86 meters below sea level, where flash floods can create temporary lakes after heavy rain. But in the Sahara, the scale is exponentially larger. The water layer would compress the sandy soil, causing local subsidence of 5 to 10 meters in weaker areas, based on geological models of deserts. This pressure could trigger minor earthquakes, with magnitudes of 4 to 6 on the Richter scale, similar to earthquakes caused by man-made lakes in the US. For example, Lake Powell in Arizona has recorded tremors due to the weight of water. In the Sahara, evaporation would create new convective currents, affecting Africa's climate. A scientific twist: the water's weight could slightly shift Earth's rotational axis, slowing it by a few milliseconds, based on studies of major earthquakes. This is similar to the impact of the 1964 Alaska earthquake, which altered the length of the day in the US. Over time, the water would dissolve salt accumulated in the Sahara's soil over thousands of years, turning it into an undrinkable, salty sea. This is similar to the salinization issue in the Colorado River in the US, affecting drinking water for 40 million people. If the water continues to seep, it could raise groundwater levels, creating springs, a miracle but also a risk of landslides, similar to karst phenomena in Kentucky's Mammoth Cave. Overall, this geological impact would not only reshape the Sahara's map, but also have global consequences, with risks extending to the US through weather changes. Environmental and ecological impacts. The environmental impact will be a story of destruction and rebirth, much like how the Great Lakes in the US recovered from industrial pollution in the 1970s to become a thriving ecosystem today. The Sahara today is an arid land, with an ecosystem adapted to drought: camels, venomous snakes, thorny grasses, and insects surviving on minimal water. When water arrives, disaster will strike immediately. Millions of animals will drown, similar to floods in the Everglades, Florida, where rising water kills fish and birds. In the short term, the old ecosystem will vanish, and the water will sweep away the surface sand, creating massive mud flows and pollution, spreading to the Nile River, affecting Egypt's ecosystem, much like how Mississippi River floods in the US pollute the Gulf of Mexico. Desert animals like camels will die en masse due to inability to move, leading to a severe loss of biodiversity. According to research from Geographical magazine, this could resemble the 2024 Sahara floods, where water killed many species but also stimulated plant growth. However, in the long term, a new ecosystem will emerge. The water will attract migratory birds from Europe and the US, for example, species that migrate across the Atlantic to Florida, turning the Sahara into a new stopover. Fish from the Nile will spread. Algae and wetland plants will thrive, creating a desert mangrove forest. This is similar to the recovery of Lake Erie in the Great Lakes, once dead from pollution but now teeming with fish. The Sahara could green again, as it did in ancient times, with plants growing due to increased rainfall, reducing desertification, a major benefit for combating climate change. Overall, this ecological impact will transform the Sahara from a deadly desert into a living oasis, but it requires careful management to avoid disaster, much like efforts to protect the Great Lakes in the US. Economic and political impacts. The economic impact will be initial chaos followed by opportunity, much like the water disputes over the Colorado River between western US states like California and Arizona. The Sahara spans 10 African countries, and the influx of water will flood land, destroying oil fields in Algeria and Libya, leading to a 20–30% spike in global oil prices, impacting the U.S. economy, which relies on oil imports. Initially, a disaster. Ancient cities like Timbuktu in Mali will be submerged, losing heritage, similar to the loss of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Millions of hectares of farmland will be lost, causing famine in Africa and increasing refugee flows, putting pressure on the U.S. through transatlantic migration. Africa's economy could shrink by 15% of GDP based on what-if models. But long-term opportunities arise. The Sahara Sea will open up a fishing industry. With thriving fish populations, desert salmon could be exported, like the Great Lakes fishery in the U.S. generating billions of dollars. Waterways will connect North Africa, reducing transport costs, much like the Erie Canal in the U.S. boosted trade. Tourism to Sahara beaches will boom, attracting American tourists, creating jobs for millions. Politically, border disputes will erupt. Who owns the lakes? Countries like Mauritania will lose 70% of their land, leading to conflicts, possibly requiring a Wet Sahara Treaty under the United Nations. The U.S. could intervene, investing in canals to control resources, similar to disputes in the South China Sea but in a desert. A political twist. China or the U.S. could turn the Sahara into a water superpower, but this could spark geopolitical wars, impacting U.S. security. Overall, the economic and political impacts will shift from crisis to prosperity, but require international cooperation, like the U.S. and Canada's collaboration on the Great Lakes. Social and global impacts. The social impact will be migration and chaos, similar to the refugee crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. Millions of Sahara residents will be displaced, causing social unrest in Africa, spreading to the U.S. through illegal migration. In the long term, the new water will address hunger through hydroponic farming, saving millions, similar to how the Boulder Dam brought water to Las Vegas. But society will change. Desert culture will fade, but a new culture will form around the sea. Globally, the U.S. will face weather impacts, disrupted monsoons causing a 10–20% crop loss in the Midwest, similar to the Dust Bowl drought of the 1930s. Sea levels won't rise, but storms will increase, affecting Florida. A global twist. This is a lesson in climate change. If the U.S. invests in greening the desert, it could save the planet, but risks accelerating floods. Conclusion. The hypothetical scenario of 10 quadrillion liters of water flooding the Sahara not only shakes Africa's geology and ecology, but also creates a global domino effect, from local earthquakes to climate changes impacting the U.S. While it offers opportunities to green the desert, it warns of the risks of man-made disasters. The lesson: environmental interventions require careful consideration to avoid unforeseen consequences. What do you think of this scenario? If you had the power to change Earth, where would you choose to create a sea?